Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast, and welcome to Sleep In Saturday. That's Q&A day. We also call it Q&A day. That's where people write in their questions on their spiritual path. Normal to have questions, of course. Got to figure this stuff out. How do I get out of this maze? And we try our best answering them in the tradition. The parampara tradition means teachers passing down to students, and then the students practicing and then sharing their realizations. And this is how it's been done for millennia. We try our best. We're not always perfect. We try to keep chaste to the teachings, not give our personal ideas of what we think. But of course, it all comes through our personal self, and there are probably many answers to these questions. Kaustubha, what do you think about this? Is there any one absolute answer to questions?
Well, I suppose it depends how precise the question is. But yeah, I mean, the way parampara works is that it's the same truth that's being handed down, but each teacher is kind of explaining it according to the desha kala patra, according to the time and the place and the circumstance, according to the person that is questioning. The answer may be presented in a different way, right?
And sometimes devotees do things differently. I used to get mad, why are they doing it like that? Don't they understand this is the way to do it? And as I got older, I started to realize, you know what? People are just trying to serve in different ways. And it might be completely different how you're going to serve, and I have no reason to dislike them because their intention might just be they want to serve, and then they would do, and it's completely different the way I do it. So sometimes you will get some different answers. I think in the material world, we're fixed in our way of this is how the solution should be, and it's really it's really based on my ego of rightness.
Yeah. But there is a balance, right? In other words, some things are wrong and some things are right, and then there are many ways to be right.
Sure. And my idea is if people want to go about serving Krishna, it's a little bit different. It's not like the ego is so invested in it necessarily. There might be better ways to do it, but if their intention is that to serve, it's just a different way of serving. It's a different vantage point of doing it. And I don't dig my heels in.
Occasionally,
I personally have about a few people I go to when I have big questions, and I pour my questions out, and I generally find they all give me similar answers.
Maybe you're going to similar people.
Yeah, maybe it's just I have some agenda and I pick the people that I want my desires to be fulfilled. Nah, I'm pretty. I mean, like you and like other friends I have, they'll call me out if they feel like I'm askew, awry, off track,
warped,
right?
Warped. Some way.
You'll call me out if you think I'm warped. You want to dive in today to these questions? Got any announcements? We want to congratulate everybody who sent in their Krishna Miracle.
Oh,
Krishna
yeah.
Miracle.
Fun with that yesterday.
That was a lot of fun. It took up the whole show, but it was good. And congratulations. There are no winners. We had 2 winners, but really everybody, it's all miracle and it's all magic stuff. And I think it's just important to tune in to these things that practically speaking, like the impossible. By the way, Yamuna Jelly called me up. Yamuna from Happy Girl Kitchen.
Yeah.
She didn't call me up. She text messaged me, and she said, I was driving down the road, and I just turned on Wisdom of the Sages in the middle of nowhere, and she turned to the left, and there was a license plate that just said Wisdom.
Miracle right there.
Krishna miracle, man. You can't make that. You can't say, okay, listen, when you get into town, I'm going to meet you there. And at that point, I'm going to turn on the radio. And that's when Wisdom say, you can't even arrange that type of stuff. That's a Krishna miracle.
How many license plates are out there and how many of them say wisdom? Like none of them except that one.
Yeah. And Mara was driving the car. Isn't that great? No, just kidding. Anyway, it's all magic stuff here. And you notice it more when you're engaged in the magical activity of Bhakti-yoga. All right.
We got an announcement about tomorrow. Got a big show.
Tomorrow's a great show with Darshan Maharaj. Don't miss it. He's a wealth of info, Sanskrit scholar, great soul. And join us at 8 o'clock, Sleep In Sunday. And again, I just want to give a shout out to Tulsi Mala. Thanks for sponsoring that. Tulasimala.com. And you go, if you want to order, they have the coolest stuff. I'm looking at their website right now instead of looking at the Zoomers. Such cool stuff here, and you get a 10% discount if you're on Wisdom of the Sages. Just put in Wisdom 108 lowercase at checkout for your coupon code. All right, let's dive into these questions, my friend.
All right, so we got a question for you up first.
All right,
you know who it's from? She's with us today, Danny
Kazakowski.
Danny Kazakowski.
Strong Island.
Yeah, Danny Kazakowski. Okay, this is a sober one. This is another one of our family that's having to deal with some of the tough, when life deals you some tough hand of cards. Right? You ready?
Yep.
She just said, "I just wanted to thank Christy." This question goes a little back a ways, so we're a little bit late in responding. This kind of got lost in the shuffle. So this is relating to a question that was asked before. But she says, "I wanted to thank Christy for her question this past Saturday." So that was going to be quite some Saturdays back. And thank from the bottom of my heart, Prabhu's Raghunath and Kaustubha for the wisdom-filled answers. Thank you, Danny. I had been trying for the past month or so to formulate my own question regarding illness and had been looking for the same answers to help in dealing with cancer. I definitely do try to see my illness as an opportunity and blessing bestowed by Krishna. I have a long spiritual history with a short degree of realization, if that makes sense. Right? Long spiritual history, short degree of realization. It's humility here.
That was very sweet, the way she said that, right?
Mm-hmm. Krishna consciousness snapped things into focus pretty quickly for me. That's nice, right?
It does that. It does that.
Yeah. Okay, now it all makes sense. Snap, snap, snap.
It does. It clicks it together.
Yeah. I wish I had been here for 30 years without flailing. To that end, because I've been thinking more about the material world and death, I feel like I need to up my game quickly as a devotee.
I like that too. Up my game.
Up it.
Up my game.
Which brings me to the question of how do we find a guru? This relates a little to last week, right?
Sure.
And how can we become initiated when temples are closed? And of course, they're just starting to open, which is important.
Bhakti Center's open?
But it's opening. It's in the process of opening now. Yeah, and like even this past Thursday, I think it was the first somewhat well-attended Thursday night kirtan. It's starting to fill up.
Oh, really?
Again. Yeah.
And we did our program there. It's sort of open-ish.
Yeah, we're on the roof most of the time. Okay, she's on. I live in Long Island, and in normal times, without COVID and without cancer, could come to the Bhakti Center. How do we accomplish these important spiritual milestones when everything is through technology now? Also, are you Prabhus? Are Shiksha Gurus? So Shiksha Guru means like not the person that formally initiates you, but someone that gives good instruction. Right? So she says, also, are you Prabhus? Are Shiksha Gurus because we are receiving instruction from you? Should we follow in your Guru lineages as far as initiation goes? Should we have the same Diksha Guru? Please excuse any ignorance on the part of this question, and please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for all you do every day, Kaustubha, Raghu, and Mara, and for creating this wonderful Sangha. One last thing. Christy, I'm not sure if you're here on Discord, but feel free to reach out. Thank you for formulating into words what I could not. You are in my prayers. Hari Om.
Our
from
own
Danny
Danny Kozakowski.
Kozakowski.
Thank you so much for writing. And you're in our prayers as well. I want you to know that. Material world just is, when you look at it through the Vishnu goggles, the eyes, spiritual vision, you see that Krishna, and it's hard because we're all going through something, and sometimes that something becomes tremendous and sometimes it's minor. But when you see it through the lens of spiritual vision, you see that Krishna is that benevolent hand, and all the hurdles and all the obstacles and all the mountain peaks we have to climb, and when the floor falls out underneath us, that Krishna is trying to lift us higher. He's trying to really refine us, and to the degree that I don't go to bitterness and anger and frustration and it's unfair, to the degree that I can keep those, and when I hear those mantras coming out of my mouth, or when I see those thoughts going into my mind, red flags should come up, and they should say, I'm off my path, and I have to take shelter more. And we take shelter with the devotees, and I understand flailing. I'm a flailer, my friend. I'm a flailer. Could be a tattoo. But I don't want to stay a flailer. So, and I like your upping the game idea. And that's like, that's sort of a regular Wisdom of the Sage is saying too. Let's up our game. And how do you do it? You're right. You take shelter of guru, and take shelter of teachers, and you take shelter of sacred literature. You take shelter of the holy name. And this is the recipe that's been going on forever. Are we your Shiksha gurus? It depends if you're getting good instruction from us. You know, sometimes I speak within the confines of the Krishna institution that I was raised in as a young man. But truthfully, no one can institute who God has sent to you to speak to you. You know, there's going to be people, and the sacred literature says they should be following like this and living like this and have this much type of realization. But you'll know in your heart who is sent to speak to you. And those people you approach privately, and if they are inspiring you, you want to render service to them. You could trace this back to the idea of like a carpenter and an assistant, or a woodworker, or you see that, or a metal worker, and you think, wow, I love this person's art. I want to follow in their footsteps. Can you teach me how you do it? And you become sort of an apprentice of sorts, a servant of sorts. And in the same way it's done in the material world, where the teacher, whether it's like a recording engineer showing the assistant how to mix a record or record a guitar, whether it's a metalsmith showing it to the student, or whether it's a teacher training them in what they've learned, there's instructions that are disseminating, and then you take it into your own life and you apply it. So Kaustubha and I play that role, of course, because we're talking on the show every day, and people approach us with questions and stuff like that. But we're not selling ourselves. We don't feel qualified, of course. But at the same time, if we stay within the parameters of our bhakti teachings, then you become qualified. You can't help it. Like, I'm not electric, but if I put a knife in an electric socket, I become electric. So sometimes Srila Prabhupada would say things like, all my students are pure devotees. Does that mean they're actually completely free from sinful activities or sinful thoughts, perhaps? Nobody. His idea is if they're following strictly, it's as if they're acting, they're becoming empowered. So we want to keep people close to us that are following strictly in their behavior, and that are immersed in Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and have some taste for it. And you can tell that they have taste for it because their joy and their immersion in it, and their less attraction for Maya. So we're at your service, but I appreciate you going to that next level. And when we go through pain in this world, that is that's where we're supposed to be directed, towards the Vaishnavas, towards the teachers, towards the sacred literature, towards our job, the holy name, towards kirtan. And we will find the answers to our problems. They'll become clearly revealed, sometimes through a whisper of Krishna, and sometimes through a loud directional, this way, exit now, road closed. Sometimes you hear that real loud too. So as as much as you're struggling, I'm excited for you because you're exactly in the right community, which is a community of people who are seeing Krishna's grace in everything. Hope that's okay, my friend. Did that answer the question, Kaustubh?
I think there was a little bit
I
more
tend to
to
drift. I tend to drift.
Well, it seemed part of the question was, there's an urgency, because of cancer that she might want to, be initiated. And so she's asking, how can she find that person to be initiated by? As well as, like, say she sees you as a Shiksha guru, like as an instructing guru. Does she have to have the same Diksha guru, the same initiating guru as you have?
No, you don't have to, of course. We can still give instruction, and we can lead you towards people that we, feel can give Diksha. Some people don't, like for example, some people don't ever spend time with Radhanath Swami or Srila Prabhupada, or sometimes gurus who have many disciples, but they live and follow the instructions through their lectures, through their teachings. But sometimes they have people on the ground. And me and Kaustubha act like this all the time. Tukaram Prabhu acts like this. That they'll come to us with like little details of their life. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Stuff you won't necessarily bring to an acharya who's got maybe thousands of disciples, and you just don't get that one-on-one time with them. And so sometimes older devotees help you figure out the minutia of existence in the material world. Kaustubh?
Yeah, and so it seems still the question is there, like, well, I'm feeling the need to be initiated into this lineage to receive the mantra. I think that's the kind of thing where you, like, Danny, right? Raghu, is it you've met her out in Long Island?
Yeah.
So, you could go to someone like Raghu and he can help you, like he can say, well, who do you feel inspired by? And he could try to, if that's a process you want to enter into, I think Raghu could help you do that.
At a certain point, it's very personal. You write us personally, and then we have a one-on-one talk with you and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily dependent on any temple being open or not. It's not necessarily you're going to find that person in a particular temple. You might, and that's great if you do. But I think we can help you in other ways too.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, Kaustubh, let me try you. Hope that was good. Bhakti Justin, fill my cup, please, Prabhu. Bhakti Justin, he's doing good. Okay. For Kaustubha.
From?
I always wonder why they say for Kaustubha. From Zach M. This is from Zach M via email. First, could you please elaborate on how to properly prostrate when meeting elevated souls such as Swamis? I know externally what to do, but I know there's so much more that I'm missing out on. Second, could you please shed some light on taking Darshan for me? Is it appropriate to sit near the deities and pray, meditate, sing to them, or otherwise remain in their progress?
Maybe in their presence?
Presence, maybe. Should I prostrate myself in front of them when entering and leaving the temple room, etc.? Again, I know there is much more things to know than I currently know. Thank you, Kaustubha Raghunath Mehra, for all that you do, continuing Srila Prabhupada's mission and making Bhagavatam available and accessible. Wisdom of the sages, Ki Jai. That was very sweet. Zach M.
Zach M., thank you for the question. So this is a question that's dealing with an aspect of yoga practice, that takes place in a temple. And he's asking about the etiquette. And, and of course, as we stressed often, what's going on here is you're doing something externally, but the purpose is the effect that it has on you internally. Mm-hmm. And so Zach mentions, he says, like when I see an elevated soul, he mentions Swamis, he says, I know externally what to do. He's asking, can you tell me how to properly prostrate? In other words, how to properly demonstrate. It's a demonstration, right? It's like, I want to demonstrate to you my respect for you. He says, how can I do that properly? I know what to do externally, but I know there's so much more that I'm missing. So like, it seems to me like what Zach is asking is, I know what to do externally, but what's supposed to be happening internally, right? And then he goes on to ask more about darshan. Literally, darshan means to see, but in India, commonly the word darshan is used for when one goes to a temple or to a holy person, right? And they see that holy person, and that holy person or the deity in the temple sees them. So just like we're going to say, I'm going to go see Raghu today, like I'm going to go to his place, he's going to see me, I'm going to see him. So darshan is like that. I'm going to go see God, or I'm going to go see this elevated person. I'm going to go see God in the temple. I'm seeing God, God's seeing me. So he's also asking about that and what's appropriate there. So, first let's deal with the first question about like when you meet someone. There's an etiquette that's traditional in, you could say, Hinduism or the yoga culture, that when you see a Swami, and a Swami is a person that's taken these lifelong vows, he's speaking about a sannyasi here, I believe, that's taken lifelong vows of celibacy, of poverty, of full exclusive dedication to serving God, that we say, this person has set aside all personal ambitions, and pleasures and comforts, having my own job and my independence and my own money and my own spouse and my own pleasures in life and my own children and my own home, and I'm not going to have any of that. I'm going to take myself and 100% devote all my energy, all my time to serve God. Well, within this culture says, whenever I see that person, you know what? I'm going to show them some respect, right? It's a nice thing, And now someone could say, well, you know what? There's a lot of those people, they may be like kind of externally displaying that, but maybe internally they're just as attached, or they got maybe they do, maybe they do, But in any case, I'm not going to sit here and judge everyone. I'm going to show, the least I could do is show that respect. And for some, I'm going to serve, or I'm going to question more intimately when I trust that they really do embody those qualities. But regardless, I'm going to show some respect. And he's saying, so when you properly, he's acting about externally about prostration. They have different things, right? Like there's the 8-limbed prostration. There's the 5-limbed prostration.
8 limbs?
Well, 8 limbs.
What, like an octopus?
Because they count it, the way they count is your knees are touching the ground, your shoulders are touching the ground, your hands are touching the ground, that's 6. Your chest is touching the ground, and your head is touching the ground. So that's like 8, right?
Okay.
Then there's 5-point prostration, where it's like your knees and your hands and your head, and your chest isn't, right?
Okay.
And then sometimes it's more just like, we'll just bow the head and fold the palms, But here's a thought. That I once read something from Krishnamacharya. Krishnamacharya, a real important figure in the history of how yoga, modern yoga came to the West. Very traditional Vaishnava, Bhakti-yogi. And he was talking about this Anjali Mudra, this mudra of the folded palms, right? And he was describing it, and not only physically, externally, but internally as well. So maybe this will give a hint to Zach. And he said that when actually you fold the palms, commonly we do it like with completely flat like this. But he said actually it should be more like this, where you kind of leave some space between the hands. Like the finger points are touching and the bottom of your hands are touching, but you have like a space in between. And he said, and then when you fold your palms that way and you bow your head, within that space in the hands, you're picturing a lotus, which is like the lotus of your heart. And you're offering that. You're offering that to the person that you're bowing to.
I've been doing namaste wrong all these years.
And it's
I
not,
wonder if it even counts.
Kind of going back to what you were saying when you started the show, it's not that because that's right, everything else is wrong, right? And if someone doesn't say that or know that, well, then they don't know anything, and then right? But it's
Right.
like try to take from it the idea that it's not just that I do this thing externally. But when I see someone that I respect, I'm offering them my respect. I'm offering them my heart. I'm offering them my service. Ultimately, I'm offering them my love, right? And so our prostration is like that. You've described sometimes, Raghunath, when you do like a prostration parikrama, right? Where it's called the Dandavat parikrama, where in a holy place, you'll go around, circumambulate some, whether it's a holy lake or a holy hill or a temple. You can go around it, and by offering a full prostration, and then you get up, and where your hands were extended to, from that point you put your feet, and then you prostrate again. So you're going up, down, up, down. You're getting in the dirt. You're getting in the dust. You're
like
right down.
CrossFit,
Huh?
spiritual CrossFit.
Yeah,
It's up and down, pushing up, push up, stand up, get down, push
it's
up.
physically demanding, and sometimes
physically
by
demanding.
the physical demand, along with the kind of just like the change of perspective that I'm down here on the ground, it can have a powerful internal effect. Where one tastes a little bit of humility and tastes a little bit of reality and tastes a little bit of the joy of being prostrated, of saying, you know what, I'm dependent on you, I'm always trying to prop myself up like I'm a big figure, but actually I'm not. And I'm happy with that, and that's fine. It's actually, because I am spirit, that when I begin to feel that, when I become a little bit in touch with my, it's funny, right? But it's like, it's through humility that we actually discover who and what we really are.
Mm.
And that's when we feel the best. Then there's no fear, there's no anxiety, there's no, and so that prostration can aid that externally. The physical form of that posture can internally aid us in connecting with our true nature.
I
and
love
growing
bowing
them.
down.
Yeah,
It's like a physical act of humbling yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see, when you learn to love it, right? Then now
Yeah.
So also when he's asking about when one enters a temple, and so just for quickly on a very practical level, in the India you could prostrate anywhere and people are going to be like, oh, that person's like they're going to know what's going on. In America, it could seem like the most bizarre. Like I just met someone that I respect in in a train station or on a sidewalk, and if I get down like that, it might not only be not understood, it might even the person that witnesses that, if they don't understand it, it might even harden them a little to it, right? Like in their heart, they might say, you know what, for a second I thought those might be nice people, but they're not. They're really weird and bizarre, So, you know what I'm saying? So the most important thing is the internal thing. So one might, in a situation like that, they might just do it with folded palms, right? And bow their
Sure.
head a little bit, right? And internally, the exact same thing is going on. But externally, due to the social circumstances, it might be a more appropriate way to offer one's respect like that. So
There's times where I'm in a public place and someone like Radha Swami comes and I'm just in my head, I would want to bow down. I just sort of like nod my head like that.
That's what
but
I
then
said.
some devotee comes out of nowhere and lays fully flat on the street and I feel, oh, what a fool. I should have just bowed down too. This guy's not there. He doesn't care. Why didn't I do that?
So, one's going to have to decide what to do on their own. But these are I'm just bringing up the different kind of considerations that are there. And then he's asking about taking darshan in the temple. And, he's saying, is it appropriate to sit near the deities? Is it appropriate to pray there? Is it appropriate to meditate, to sing to them, or to otherwise remain in their presence, I believe is what he's asking. Yes, exactly. It's a wonderful thing to do. Should I prostrate myself in front of them? Yes, that is the etiquette, that when you enter and when you exit, that you prostrate, that you make that physical demonstration. Because again, I was speaking about this the other day, right? Like walking, maybe it was on another class I was giving. I don't remember now. But, like going to a temple like Tirupati, right? It's a ancient, really super important temple of Lord Vishnu in South India. And to get to the temple, you have to climb 3,500 stairs, over 3,500 stairs, right? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful walk, but it's physically demanding, and but with each step, it's preparing you to, and there you only have that darshan for a moment, right? It's like, because there's thousands and thousands of people waiting for that opportunity, and you're brought in front of Balaji, of Lord Vishnu, and just for a moment, and then you have to move on. Like it can really literally be just a couple seconds.
I feel like going there right now.
I know, right?
Let's
Climbing
go
that hill. Right?
Sheepology. What are we doing here?
For those couple seconds, it's bliss to go through the physical exertion of climbing all those steps. Then bathing in the tank there, right? Bathing in they call it tank, right? It's weird for us.
The tank. That's an
But
Indian word, tank. Go bathe in the tank.
You go bathe
What?
in this kind of man-made pond, with steps that go down into it. Then you come out, so you've walked up there. Then you bathe yourself. You kind of cleanse yourself. You come out fresh, And then you wait in line, and you're waiting for that moment where I'm only gonna have a few moments where we're standing before the Lord like that, and I want to be in the right consciousness. And so whether you're climbing 3,500 steps or you're just walking in the door, and at least you're prostrating yourself, so that when you approach, you're approaching in the right state of mind. Yoga is all about the mind. Yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self experiencing their own true nature. So when I enter in that temple, I don't want to be casual. I don't want to be like, hey God, what's up? I want to be like, I want to be in that right state of consciousness. I don't want to, it's just like if I had an important guest come to my home, or if I went to the home of a very important person, my attention would be focused. And so similarly, we want to focus our attention on, on God in the temple, and by prostrating, it helps that. You can sing there, you can pray there, you can remain in that presence, you can spend quiet time there. All these things are recommended. So I hope that's helpful.
What about the 8 or 5 limbs for ladies?
Is someone asking that?
Vivi's asking.
I've heard both. I've seen references where it's even if you go to Tirupati, right? Like if you're at the bottom of the hill, and you see this not only there, but I've seen in other places in South India. It's really cool. Have you seen this, Raghunath? There's a carving right into the stone on the ground, and I believe it's of King Kulashekar, this great, one of the 12 Alwars, this great king who was a very deep Bhakti-yogi. And it shows his body prostrate on the ground, and then it has his wife next to him. He's in 8-point and she's in 5-point, which seems to be like, that would be a traditional indication. I don't know how long that carving's been there. It might have been there for 50 years. It may have been there for,
You've seen women do 8-point.
thousands.
Women do 8-point as well.
I've also seen references where that's fine too, where it's been mentioned in in these ancient texts of how a woman bowed down like fully. So, most commonly I see women do it like 5-pointed, but, again, really what matters is how the heart is situated. So
Intention behind it.
yeah, you see, it gets right back to the point where you started again, Raghu. It's just like there may be references that say, the men should bow down like this and the women should bow down like that. And then one could start to find fault with everyone that doesn't follow that exactly. But there may be other references that say other things too, So we should be careful when we start, judging or condemning people for doing things unless we really know the subject well. And even then, we're not condemning; we're just trying to help.
I love judging and condemning people. Good morning, everyone.
My name is Raghunath,
Just
and I love
kidding.
judging and condemning.
Just kidding. I'm condemning you right now. And judging you.
And judging. Okay, we got a question from Amalie Dion for you, Raghunath. You ready?
Amalie. It's a girl? Amalie?
Amalie.
Amalie.
Yes. Amalie asks, this is a really good question. She says, first of all, it's one of those questions of like, I want to practice this, but I'm living in this world, and they don't seem to line up well.
What do I do?
Yeah.
I'm in
So
here.
she asks, first, I would like to thank you for the great work you're doing in this world. I have been listening to the podcast and been a patron member for a few months. Thank you so much for that, Amalie. We appreciate your support.
Really
I'm
grateful.
I'm greatly appreciative of your generosity. I have been wrestling with some ethical questions in my life for a while and have been wondering what to do about them. For some background, I'm a chemist and I have been working in the pharma industry for the last 10 years. I joined the industry mostly because they're the only ones who can hire somebody with my skills. 10 years of undergrad and grad school and postgrad. But from the start, I have felt an unease. Okay, it's very interesting, right? You become a really qualified person in your field. But then just because of the way the world's situated, it's like the only people that can hire me, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with what they do. Right?
And they pay well.
Yeah, you got debts.
You got debts. It sounds good.
You need someone that's gonna. So She goes on, I like chemistry and enjoy doing it, but the purpose for its use doesn't appeal to me, i.e. making drugs for pharma to sell. To try to find an alternative path for myself, I have studied nutrition. I have been plant-based for 12 years. Studied permaculture, shamanism, herbal medicine, and many more. My dilemma is that I would not have been able to do all of those programs if I didn't have a decent salary. And so,
Good point.
That's the world we live in, right? And so far, I had felt I could do more good in the world by keeping my current job. I have seen countless of my spiritual friends struggling over the years and have limited their impact in the world because of it. If I take the money from pharma, my pay, and channel into good causes, buying and planting fruit trees, herbs, yoga retreats, courses, investing in environmental causes, supporting great teachers, does it somewhat purify it? That's a big question right up front. We want to make sure we cover that. And then she goes on, in other words, if you work for something bad, but you create good impacts out of it, what are the karmic implications? It's something that I've been thinking about a lot in the past few years. My permaculture teacher was quick to condemn pharma, but didn't have any trouble accepting the money which came from them. What is even pushing me further into those reflections are the worldwide events occurring right now, which are making me deeply uncomfortable. I think what is currently happening is unethical at best, forcing an unapproved drug on everybody, even children, to illegal or dark at worst. It's unethical, it's possibly illegal, it's definitely, or dark.
Sure.
To be clear, I don't know any secrets other than what is already known yet, but I can read what has been published and, more importantly, what has not been reported. As you can imagine, I feel pretty alone in my way of thinking between my colleagues and even my friends and family. I have found solace on the bhakti path, but I'm wondering what Krishna requires from me here. What would be the bhakti approach to see the situation in which I'm in? Thank you for that honest and well-articulated question, Amelie.
Well, Amelie, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, I believe.
Well, Amelie, you're working for a bunch of demons. And from there, I would just, well, wait a second. No. Well, I think it's important to understand, what's that phrase we've been saying lately about the prostitute?
The prostitute, I don't know. Trick of chance?
The trick of chance. Sometimes due to a trick of chance or where fate takes us, we're working in a place where we're like, I don't want to be working here. But I have to work here. It seems like you've got some light has been shed on your situation. You're like, this is a trick of chance. I'm here and I feel really uncomfortable here. And the people I'm working with don't even get it. And I feel like I'm prostituting myself. I'm giving my life, my energy, my intelligence, my skills, my hard work and labor, my thoughts. I'm giving them to people who you feel maybe are criminal or inappropriate, and you're taking a cut of their stuff and you're putting it towards something good. So no one's hands are clean in the material world. Sometimes people like to shame you. Oh, you're wearing Nikes. Do you know what? Or you're using an iPhone. Everyone's hands in the material world are very dirty. It's just it just really is. And if you really don't like to have dirty hands, and you really don't like, instead of criticizing, you're not criticizing people, you're criticizing yourself. But a lot of people criticize other people. Then you got to really become a hermit, practically speaking, and learn to live off the land. And there's ways to do that. I'm not even saying do that, but you've got to figure out what that balance is. Like, for example, take something like Big Pharma, and I completely understand where you're going with this stuff. And I was raised in juicing, fasting, cleansing, responsibility for my health, my immune system. Since I was like 19, I've been shoving spirulina down my throat and, getting into Ayurvedic books when I was, 18 years old. And so I know there's some responsibility with my immune system. At the same time, and I was really, really anti Big Pharma. At the same time, one of my older sons has type 1 diabetes. And what's the Ayurvedic cure for type 1 diabetes? You don't. You die. You go blind and you die. And so I will say that was a blessing, and it made me like sort of shift my perspective, that my son can live due to whatever big pharma is creating. Now, whenever there's a lot of money behind something, it gets a little sketchy, because sometimes they're not working necessarily on a cure. They're working how to keep people in this system where they have lifelong customers. And so it's sort of like you have like a bunch of foxes guarding the chickens. All right, do you want to actually cure type 1 diabetes? Then you're going to lose business. And then your shareholders aren't going to get any money from that. So it is a tricky place, and you got to figure out, how much do I want to be with these people? Is there some good there? I always like to extend faith, like that people actually do care about people. But sometimes when you're really enmeshed in it, you start to realize, I don't have faith in these people. And then you got to figure out when you want to back off and maybe don't work for them and just figure out your own thing. But it is true in our culture that purifying wealth by giving it in charity is a way to purify it. And because to the degree that I accumulate wealth, oftentimes there's some dirty hand involved in there. And it's not just you. You know, if you're you know, I'm looking at Mara right now making her spaghetti, whatever she's doing. She's got a printed T-shirt. That printed T-shirt was made with some toxic chemical that went into the water table. And I'm about to shame Mara publicly again, wrecking our water table so you could walk around in your fancy Simon's Catering T-shirt. But you know what I mean? Just living in this world, our mic cables, our MacBooks, our yoga pants, and the material those are made of. We try at best to minimize our effect on the world, right down to like we eat plants. You know, we don't want to take part in such a cruel industry that has massive repercussions. At the same time, we try to minimize in many other regards as well too. And we should, and I appreciate that you're trying to become more and more conscious of that. And the fact that you're conscious is a huge step. And you may, hopefully this will give you a little nudge in some direction, not to see everything that you're doing as evil. I don't think it is. I think there's saving people's lives, prolonging people's lives. But at the same time, once you get a taste from this natural healing and this whole alternative way of getting better, then it's sort of like you get torn. So I can't direct you in this, but I can say that purifying that wealth is a good thing. And how you spend that money they give you is going to affect your consciousness as well. And there may be a time where you say, you know what, I've had enough of this. I can't live in integrity like this anymore. I totally get that myself too in my own life. Hope that was useful. Did that answer the question, Kaustubha? Kaustubha always brings me back to Raghunath, but the question is this.
I think you answered the question, and you know, I think the center of that question was, if I, you know, can I purify it, which I think you did answer, and I think, you know, another part of it is just like, we get your struggle, you know, pretty much everyone's going through that same kind of struggle on one level or another. It's great when we can have an occupation that we wholeheartedly embrace and feel good about, and it's a struggle if we don't. And as Raghunath's saying, you know, the answer for how to deal with that is going to be different for every person. Our main thing is we want to deepen our spiritual consciousness. We want to deepen our service in this world. And exactly how that's done, that's the principle. And the details of how that will be done will be different. And there could be different answers in different circumstances for different people. And for the same person, it may change. As Raghunath's saying, is like, you might, even your very desire to that, you know what, I would like to serve God more directly rather than serve these people and serve God indirectly by purifying the money, by engaging in some way. Simply your desire might open up the opportunity for that to happen at some point, you know. Or you might reach that point of like, you know what, I spent 30 years in that industry, just, you know, and it was always a tension that I was feeling there. But I was always cultivating the desire to be able to let it go. And then when you retire, you know, your spiritual life could just take off from that you know, because the eagerness that you'll have may be intensified by the situation that you're in now, you know. And so sometimes spiritual life is like that. It's kind of like, when Sita is sitting there in the Ashok forest, she's like all alone, and I think, I think that Amalie mentioned, it's kind of like I feel all alone sometimes, even with my friends and family. What to speak of with my comrades at work. Well, you're kind of like Sita sitting alone in this Ashok forest there. She's keeping Ram in her heart the whole time.
Right.
And really being alone and being surrounded by people that don't get it is only intensifying the feeling, and that's the feeling that we're aiming for. And so maybe you'll go through, some years of this, and then when you're able to let it go, all of that feeling of alienation from the material world will really, slingshot you into really deep, powerful spiritual practice and consciousness.
Let's call her Sita.
Sita.
I like your answer better than my answer.
I like your answer.
I'm gonna ask you a question,
All right.
friend. It's your turn, and this is from Tristram.
Tristram.
I like Tristram.
Yeah, me too.
Tristram from the Discord thread. The Discord thread's still hopping, Kaustubha. It's hopping.
I'm so out of it. I got
You and me, we haven't checked in so much in Discord thread, but
Yeah.
if you're a Patreon member, there's a whole Discord thing that happens where people are writing questions and they're groups and chatting and talking Krishna and talking spirituality and talking Ayurveda, and it's the whole damn thing, the Discord thread. So Tristram writes from the Discord thread, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj.
Mhm.
This is I am that approach. How does that sit with Bhakti? I am
How does
that.
that sit with Bhakti?
How does that sit with Bhakti? I am that. Like, what does that got to do with sweet baby Krishna, Kaustubha? I am that. I am that
that's a
what?
good question. Yeah, well, this question, what it alludes to is the, I don't know, I guess you could say Nisargadatta was he was like a guru, like a Jnana Yogi guru, right? And he published a book called I Am That. And I haven't read the whole book, but I've kind of gone through it quite a bit, but that was like nearly 20 years ago.
Wow, I never read that.
Huh? Have you seen I Am
I
That?
never heard of it.
You never heard of I Am
heard
That? It's a big one.
No, no. I am that.
Okay, I am that. But I Am That, it kind of is like that. Also, that's alluding to like what some people call the Mahavakyas of the Upanishads. It's from the Chandogya Upanishad. The Mahavakya means like the great instructions.
Okay.
And the Advaita Vedanta school, the school of Vedanta that well, I'll explain it a bit. But one of the schools of Vedanta, and the Advaita Vedanta school, they I believe they point out 4 Mahavakyas, of which this is one of them. 4 big instructions. And literally the phrase is Tattvam Asi, which means you are that.
You are
Right.
that.
You are that.
I thought I was that.
Well,
you are
are.
that? I'm that.
So tat means that, and tvam means you, and asi means are. So like that you are, right? That you are. So what is it referring to? It's a conversation where a father is speaking to his son. I think the son's name is Sveta Ketu, and his guru, like father, is saying, you are that. He's explaining spirit. He's explaining Brahman, right? That beyond the material elements which are constantly in flux and constantly shifting and constantly changing, there is Brahman. There is spiritual energy, and you are made of that spiritual energy. You are that, right? You are that. But the way that one school of Vedanta, let's say the Bhakti Vedantas, interpret that is different from the way the Advaitins interpret that. So the way Nisargadatta was interpreting that in his book, I Am That, he was saying, I am that, like, because I believe his guru instructed him, just focus that you are that. Just make that your primary meditation. And so the way that he'll interpret Tattvamasi, you at, is that you are God, right? That Brahman means God, and that you are God. Whereas the Bhakti Vedanta, the Bhakti yogis will say, no. What that means is that you are made of the same energy that God is made of, but you're not God. And they'll point to so many, so then they'll go to another Upanishadic text, like Nityo Nityanam, Chaitanya Chaitananam, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman, that amongst the many eternal beings, it's perfect because what does Brahman mean? What does spirit energy mean? It means two things. It means that it's eternal, not temporary like material energy. And it means it's conscious, not, insentient like material energy. So you are that. You are eternal. You are conscious. But Nityo Nityanam, amongst the many eternals, there's one eternal. Chaitanya Chaitananam, amongst the many conscious, there's one conscious being. Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman, and the many are dependent on the one. So they're one, but they're different at the same time, right? Just like the sun rays, they're made of the same energy of the sun. They have the qualities of the sun. The sun rays have light and they have heat, but the sun rays are dependent on the sun. One is the source. One is dependent on the other. And so if you flush out the whole teachings of the Upanishads, what to speak of where these things are very clearly laid out, say in Bhagavad Gita or in Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll find that yes, you are Brahman, that thou art, you are that. But you're not the source of Brahman energy, right? There is a source of that, and that's Sri Krishna. And so how does that sit with the bhakti approach? It doesn't sit so well. Not the way that
it doesn't sit so well.
And this is the reason why, is because if I think that I'm God, well then there's no then I've actually misunderstood who I am. Right? By nature, I'm the lover of God, and God loves me. And are being distinct from another, one in energy, but separate in identity, that allows that love to flow from one to the other and back and forth. And if I'm confused and I'm thinking that I am God, well then where's the question of any love being expressed? Right? So that's the sometimes you'll find people from the Advaita Vedanta school, probably Nisargadatta himself, I'm not so familiar with his teachings, they'll recommend bhakti. And they'll say, yes, practice your bhakti. It doesn't matter which of the gods you choose. They're all manifestations of Brahman. The forms are temporary. They're unreal. But worship one. And that will help gradually lift you up. But eventually you let those go. And then you move on from bhakti, which is sentimental and not absolute truth, to jnana, which means now I understand everything, that I am God. And so we would say that those practices that a person with this concept is doing, like let's say I'm worshiping Durga, or Ganesh, or whichever god, and I'm thinking that this form, by meditating on this form, I'll gradually let go of meditating on the material things. And then at a certain point, I'll realize that I am also God. And then I won't need to worship Ganesh anymore. I won't need to worship Devi anymore. We would say that that's not actually bhakti. Because bhakti means love. And love means I'm not asking something from you. And then once I've got it, I don't need you anymore. Love means I serve out of love because it pleases you. Right? And so it's a different conception. And so we'd say that externally that looks like bhakti, but it's not truly bhakti. It's not the true sentiments of bhakti. So that this debate has been going on forever.
Let's
end
it right now.
Let's end
that debate right
now. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which I'll be posting classes, I am already started posting classes for our Patreon members. There'll be a new one coming out probably on Monday or Tuesday. And some of those conversations from the Chaitanya Charitamrita that I focus on are exactly covering this. Sri Chaitanya speaks with Sarvabhauma, who was like a very powerful, influential Advaita Vedantin, or at least, like an impersonalist. And the way that Sri Chaitanya explains Vedanta to him, so he says, now I get it. And the same thing happens with a super heavy-duty Advaita Vedanta named Prakashananda Saraswati, who was like a sannyasi and a leader of all these hundreds of sannyasis in Varanasi. And they go to Sri Chaitanya and they kind of have a bit of a debate. And Sri Chaitanya begins to explain. And what he says is he speaks actually about this Tattvamasi. And he says this isn't actually Mahavakya. It's not one of the great instructions. It's a secondary instruction. It's important that we understand that I am spirit. but there's so many more important things to focus on, you know. But this particular phrase has been misinterpreted and elevated to the position of Mahavakya when it's actually not. It's an important instruction. Let's understand it in its proper context. And when he explained the whole thing to them like that, then they're like, oh, now we get it. So, you know, we respect anyone that's like practicing spirituality, you know, and to the extent that they're speaking truth, we embrace that truth. But at the same time, if someone's telling us that we are God, well, we'll say, well, that's according to, you know, there's Bhagavad Gita's where, you know, the Upanishads are little, you know, they tend to be kind of cryptic. They tend to lend themselves more to like these vague kind of interpretations. But if you look at Bhagavad Gita, it gets super clear. What to speak of Bhagavatam, you know, like, you know, we've that video, we posted a reel on Instagram of the shloka chanting group with Chapu chanting. You saw it, Raghunath?
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, it was great. That's gone viral. That's been our biggest Instagram post. Yeah. And it's a really nice video of her chanting. She's chanting 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and she chaps this one verse. Mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashastani
prakritistani karshati.
So here it's very clear language. Mama, my, eva, certainly, angsa, fragmental parts. You know, jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana. The jiva bhutas, all the conditioned living entities in this world, they are my angsas, my fragmental parts. And then he says sanatana, eternally, right? Not temporarily, but eternally. Every living being is a part of God, but they're a separated part of God eternally. They're the energy of God, but they have their, you know, when Prabhupada was explaining Tattvamasi, he gave the example. It was back when Nixon was president, and he said, you know, if I said to you, you know, you as an American citizen, you are as good as Nixon. You are as much an American as Nixon is, right? Even though he's president, and there's only one of him, and there's like millions of others. Each one of them is just as much American as he is, but he's the president, and he's got powers that you don't have, right? So suddenly when you say you are that, it's like saying you're an American, but it doesn't mean that you're the president, you know? Prabhupada could make it like, he could just break it down like, you know, so simply and clearly. So, yeah, so, you know, again, we appreciate anyone that's sincerely practicing. Not only are texts like Chaitanya Charitamrita, which are 500 years old, but if you go back to texts that are like thousands of years old, like Srimad Bhagavatam, we're going to read about how people like the four Kumaras, who were, let's say they were impersonalists, I wouldn't say they're exactly Advaitins, but they didn't conceive of the form of God or the Bhagavan feature of God, the personal God. But when they came in contact with it, then they evolved into that. We see in the text, spiritual aspirants evolve from the impersonal conception of God to the personal conception of God. We don't see it go the other way. We don't see people that, I believe that Krishna was Bhagavan, but then I realize that he's not, and that I am God. We don't see that happening. We see it go
so
the
much.
other
I'm
way.
sure you see it somewhere, but
no, you don't
see it so much.
You don't. You don't see it anywhere. You know, that's the point. You know, you could have people like in modern day books speak that way. You know, but you don't see it in these sacred texts. All right. I hope that's been helpful. Do we have time? We don't have time for one more. We're out of time.
We're out of time. Wow. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on Q&A Saturday. Now, we do this every Saturday. Sunday, we have a special guest tomorrow, Raghunath Maharaj. I'm really excited to talk to him. I had a 10-minute call with him just to, like, talk about what we're going to talk about. That lasted about an hour and 10 minutes. So I just like talking to him. He came on one of my teacher trainings once. Anyway, we're excited for that. Tomorrow, 8 o'clock, don't miss it. Italy's almost filled up. If you haven't signed up for Italy officially, it's going to be filled up. And we're going to have a great time in Tuscany, visiting Florence, doing our Wisdom of the Sages thing there, having lots of kirtan, lots of great Italian food. I'm really excited. And then also January, we're hoping India will open up. I feel it will be by January for our our wisdom training, my Super Soul 300 training that happens in January. You can check out my website, Raghunath.yoga, and you can check all that stuff out there. Thanks for everybody for joining us today. And if you like what we're doing, go to Apple Podcasts, write your story. We want to hear your story, especially you others out there that we don't know. We don't even know you're listening. Get on the Apple Podcast. It's a good way to tell us who you are and where you come from. And thanks for everybody writing to us. Thanks to all the Patreon people for support. We are community supported. Patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages. Now put your hands in the air and let's start singing.